Hey friends, it is Lisa Mason Ziegler coming to you here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon here in Virginia. And this is Ask a Flower Farmer. And what that is I will do my best to answer your questions as best I can, and I'll answer those questions that you all post down in that bubble with the question mark down below. That way I don't miss your questions and have to scroll through everybody's names. So post your question in there about anything to do with growing flowers and flower farming. Cool flowers, seed starting, growing business, whatever you've got. I will do my best to answer them all. And I will say, so we're coming out of a freeze down here. So we've been down, it's been pretty nippy. You know, in Virginia, we get down to the teens and even occasionally single digits, but not real often. And we just came off of one of those. And so now, starting today, we are heading into like 2 weeks, or actually maybe like 10 days of 55 and 60 degree days. So I did what I wasn't supposed to do today. So for those of you that have been following along with me, you know that I've had COVID twice in the last 3 to 4 weeks. So I have been sick, and so I've got a lot of work piling up, and I had all this work lined up for me to do today because I'm feeling better. Even though I sound a little bad, I'm feeling a whole lot better. But I ended up, y'all, uncovering my cool flowers, because it's like, can you hear the birds? They all stopped singing when I said that. Anyway, so I spent the morning uncovering cool flowers. I posted a great reel talking about that. And, you know, I will say that because I was under the weather, I really didn't even think about my cool flowers not surviving. You know what I mean? I just blocked them out, and everything was pleasantly, surprisingly looking great underneath there. A couple of question marks, but they'll be fine. So we'll be back in cold weather before long. This is classic Virginia, right? So a couple of housekeeping things. Again, I see that y'all are getting your questions posted in the question mark bubble down below, and I'll go to them in just a second here. So what did I want to talk about? So don't forget that this Friday on the show, we're doing seed starting, I think, pretty much every week, just about, on the live show on Fridays inside my app. So you can check that out. Just go to your phone's app store, search Gardener's Workshop, get my app, and you have great features in there when you have the app on your phone. You can watch the replays, but we demonstrate different stuff and show things, and would love for you to join us there. And of course, this Friday is like a great Friday. I think it's this Friday. What is today? I don't even know what day it is. I think this is the Friday, or maybe it's next Friday. Sorry, y'all. That we're doing a lot of potential Valentine's Day gifty kind of things. We have a lot of great flower arranging accessories and things that people, not even that flower arrange, just that make bouquets from their garden or from supermarket bouquets. Anyway, we have a lot of that stuff over in our phone app store that's not on our website. So there's a lot of great stuff over there. And friends, we are bearing down on my new book, the Cut Flower Handbook, which is it's been delayed because of this global shipping problems. The book is going to be delayed. We don't really know, you know. I mean, they'll let us know as soon as it gets to the USA. But, you know, I haven't said this in a long time. You know, we have a certain number of books that we've pre-ordered that we're guaranteed to get of the first printing. And we're getting close to that limit for pre-orders. So I'm just saying to you, I feel like first we had COVID that screwed up the shipping and fulfillment, right? Supply and demand. Now we have this global mess. And anyway, so I'm just saying, if you want a book and you want to get in on the first shipment or the first printing, you can pre-order the book over at thegardenersworkshop.com. And when you do pre-order through us, then you also get the Cool Flower Zone Guide as well as when the book ships, you'll also get the additional PDF of the flowers that didn't make the book. And so we'd love for you to get it, and I'd love to sign a book for you. All right, we got a bunch of questions. My voice is already getting wore out. Any ideas for the best ways to start growing indoors in New York City? So, I don't have any ideas for growing cut flowers indoors in the city. You can certainly start seeds there, but then obviously you have to have somewhere to plant them. I will tell you that my friend Linda Yang, who was the New York Times garden writer for many years and is the author of the book, this name may not be exactly right, The City Gardener. She lived on a high-rise in Manhattan, and it was amazing what she did on her terrace. And so that's the book I would recommend for you, is The City Gardener. And when I was in New York and met her, oh gosh, it's probably been 8-9 years ago. At that time, her book was over 20 years old, and it was still on a bestsellers list, and it was still in I went to Barnes and Noble just to see it after I met her, and we had a great dinner together. And it was in the bookstores there. So The City Gardener is what I would recommend for you, written by one of your fellow New Yorkers that actually has done it. Christina, I'm also in Virginia. When are you starting the next round of cool flowers, I would guess you're asking. Well, we've already started a ton. I mean, our next window, the best window for planting cool flowers, is in what we refer to as very early spring, and that is 6 to 8 weeks before your last spring frost. So just it depends on when your frost is. We have frosts in Virginia from mid-April till mid-May. So you really need to know when your frost is, and that gives you the target date. I'm suspecting that you better hop to it, because we start everything indoors. You don't direct seed in very early spring for a lot of reasons. But I'm just looking at a whole big table over here. I just moved them out today of all the seedlings. Not all, but many of the seedlings. So yes, now is the time to get busy with those, to take advantage of the cool flower concept. So if you start late and plant late, then you don't get those advantages of this whole concept of cool flowers. All right, massive winds took out my Bio 360 that's been prepped in October for early March planting. Had trouble with wildlife puncturing it before that. Suggestions: could I prep beds like you do, then cover with tarps that could be secured without ripping? So I've had that happen before. And so if you're saying you had beds that were prepared and covered with film but didn't have holes punched in them for plants anyway, there's definitely a learning curve to putting Bio 3 or any film down by hand. Learning lots of things, like, for instance, the bed top, the flatter the bed top is and the straighter the sides, the better the film lays without air pockets underneath of it. And then if you have to seal the film all the way around the edges with not a lot of soil, but the soil, you just don't want wind to be able to get up under it. And I've had that happen. And in my case, 9 out of 10 times those beds all had failures in spots because I didn't have them installed properly for whatever reason. Stuff happens, right? So you can, sorry y'all, I am expecting somebody to drive by here in a few minutes, and I keep thinking that's them. I would say to kind of revisit, if you're one of my students, you can watch the video again. I'm going to move out of the sun. If you're one of my students, you can rewatch the bed making in the course. There's a little short clip on the product page of the Bio 360. Bio 360, for those of y'all not familiar, is the biodegradable film that's on all those beds out there. I use it. It is it's one of the reasons that I was able to scale my farm. It's just such a labor saver. I mean, particularly for cool flowers anyway. But I would revisit the instructions and see perhaps where it failed. And then you can, like we did, The beds that were prepared in fall that are sitting out there waiting, which are in another garden, they have silage tarp on top of them, which would help secure from that. And they just have weight bags put on them, so that wouldn't be a problem. So I hope that helps. Does the 6 to 8 weeks prior to last frost work for any zone? I'm in zone 6. What a great question, Ginger. Yes, that is in fact true. So I know it is very confusing, and I cannot wait for y'all to have my new book. I tell you, I spent so much time trying to simplify and make it really clear how we each, for our zone, with our frost dates, can figure out when to plant stuff, because I know it is so bloomin' confusing, right? I mean, the warm season stuff, it's like, all right, I can figure that out. Once it's past my heat, past my frost date and it's warming up, it's time, right? Not so with cool. So in very early spring, and if you train yourself to kind of talk about it that way, very early spring, that's the trigger that says, for me, that's 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. Everybody should be able to plant at that window, assuming you don't have heavy snow load. Those people you could plant if you could get to your beds. But I'm just saying you can plant that far in advance. Because even for those of us that are in colder zones, most of these plants will take cold. They just won't take a long, deep winter of deep, deep cold if it particularly is not winter hardy in your zone. Like people in zone 5, a lot of the stuff that's winter hardy to zone 8, I'll go down to the teens in single digits right before our frost, and the plant will take it. It just won't take 3 months of it, right? And survive that. So yes, very early spring, 6 to 8 week window is for anybody, anywhere, in any zone. And assuming you can get to your beds that you prepared in the fall. And I will tell you, I've had people reach out with all kinds of interesting ways of removing snow from prepared beds in the fall this time of the year so that they can actually plant. Because this planting window, where a lot of people think that the fall's the big planting time, I tell you, this very early spring planting time is an opportunity for the north. We have people in Alberta and Canada, all kinds of places where they have deep, long winters. They can get this family of flowers in the ground so much earlier than warm season that they're trying all kinds of tricks. So yes, it is for you in zone 6. How would you recommend starting sunflowers for flowers by Mother's Day in zone 7A, New Jersey? We plan on doing 6 sessions every 2 weeks. So I don't ever, I take that back. So you're just going to have to try it. It totally depends on your conditions. So 7A is not as significant as when is your last frost date. So for us down here in Virginia, and I'm now in 8A, I used to be 7B, we starting sunflowers, which we call early birds, which means that they are definitely susceptible to getting killed by the weather, right? We normally would start sunflowers 3 weeks before our last frost date. That's how long we grow transplants. And then we do it every week. You can try every other week, but I'm telling you, every week is the best ever. You just have them right on schedule. Anyway, it depends on what sunflower you're growing, your conditions, and when you get them in the ground. We grow pro cuts, which are 55 to 60 days. When we start about 6 weeks before our last frost date, which our last frost date is April, which means that is the 1st of March, April, May. So that gets us, we had sunflowers before Mother's Day last year. So until you try it, you're just not going to know it. And then, of course, when you plant those sunflower transplants out at 3 weeks old into cold, you have to double cover them. You have to be sure they're in, healthy, you know what I mean? Cuddle them a little bit if you want them to grow, right? But we had them, and interesting that we have a lot of people getting sunflowers for Mother's Day. And, the other part of that is the colors that you grow. We don't grow the classic orange for that time of the year. We grow the white and lemon and peach and all those great colors. Will the Swift Blocker Mini work well for sunflowers? I also purchased the Mini 27 from you, but haven't used it. So that's a really great question, and we did a test. And the Mini 75 just is not big enough for sunflowers in my experiment. And so the Mini 27 is possible. And you know, something that I've never tried, but my friend Jonathan Lease of Springforth Farm, way back when they were growing sunflowers, he talked about that in the 2-inch block, which is close to the Mini 27, which is 1.5 inches, he was putting 3 seeds in each block. And kind of doing that cluster thing that I do, but then just spacing them a little bit further apart. So in fact, the 27 would give you like what, 78 or whatever that number would be, 3 times 27. So you could try that, but you know, that's why we revert to plug trays for volume growing. If you don't need many, that's the thing to do. But if you need a lot, if you need over 50 a week, then I would definitely use plug trays. I have sowed several cool hardy annuals in milk jugs. Do you think they will germinate? I have no idea. I don't have any experience with the winter sowing method. We tend to want to sow and plant either in place or plant plants. So I hear a lot of people have success with that. So good luck, but I have no idea. And it also would depend on what kind of hardy annuals they are. Are all of your cut flowers in the ground? Do you use raised beds? So yes, all of those beds you see out there are raised. They're about 4 to 5 inches. They don't have frames. They're what we call mounded beds, of which we also talk about that in the new book, the Cut Flower Handbook. It talks about making a mounded bed or a raised beds, and you know, basically some steps and illustrations of how to build those. Those were built by a tractor. I have another area that we call our no-till area that the beds were made by me and a shovel, but they are raised, and there are just lots of great reasons why to have raised beds. For us here, we just get so much rain sometimes that if our beds weren't raised, our plants would just drown. All right. Can Snapdragon Group 3 or 4 survive in 9B summer, which is hot above 100 degrees and dry? I don't know. So the question, for any of you that don't know what she's asking, so Snapdragons, different varieties are what are called in what are groups. And the groups tend to tell you when they're going to bloom. And that bloom is based on day length. Group 1 and 2 bloom earlier in the season when the days are shorter, like Chantilly, which blooms for us here in April. And then there's other varieties, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think Potomac and Rocket are 3 and 4, and they'll bloom later in the season. What I find, even though there are varieties that will bloom in the deep summer here for me in Virginia, they'll bloom and grow, but they are so pest and disease ridden because of the heat and the humidity. It's not worth growing them, is what I have found. And I will also tell you, I mean, if you're selling strictly to florists, you know, they'll buy a Snapdragon any time of the year. But for us, our customers, florists, supermarkets, bouquet people, private market people, they're ready for summer flowers, and we just transition out. I would say the last snaps that, I mean, we grow them all, Opus and Rockets, and they're later. Probably by the end of June, we're coming to the end of our Snapdragons by choice, but it's because they get diseases. So no, they might survive, but barely, and they probably would not be worth cutting. In Zone 9B, I can't imagine growing snaps at that time of the year. And you know, y'all, before I answer the next question, I just want to say that that's where I think the light switch flipped for me many years ago, when I realized how hard it is to grow. Let's just take, for example, Snapdragons in the summer when you're in the South. I mean, anybody that has hot, humid summers. that is not conducive to snapdragons. They're cool season hardy annuals. So why not grow warm season annuals that thrive in those conditions? And when I made that twist, my life got so much easier and my business just warped out of control because I spent all of my time selling, growing, cutting, planting instead of fussing, worrying, and trying to do CPR. You know what I mean? And it just never clicked with me for a really long time. I was trying to get zinnias earlier or get snapdragons to go later. And in fact, it's better to have cool season for their time and then they have a time of warm to just come in and take over. And I did find after 26 years of growing flowers now that customers love the seasonality of that, right? So, there you have it. Do you plant zinnias in succession? How often? We plant almost, it's hot out here. I am having to take my coat off. We almost succession plant everything, and zinnias is certainly one of them. And that's another thing the book really helps you to figure out is how many successions based on your first and last frost and based on how many days from seed to bloom. All of that kind of comes into play. And so for me, I have a really long warm season. We're from mid-April to mid-November, and depends on, this time of my life when we are not in high production, where we just grow we still are harvesting a few thousand stems of flowers a week, not tens of thousands, right, of stems. We'll do like 3 successions in a summer. We were high production. Shoot, I was doing 6 successions because it's insurance policy, it is volume, and it is quality control. So all of those things really matter. And the book, again, will really help with that. And I also want to say that, we're given free bonus resources with pre-orders, and then just even after the book gets here, the one resource will still be available. Pre-orders are the only people that are getting the cool season planting guide. Zone guide. And then once the book arrives, that's no longer going to be a bonus because it's no longer pre-order. But if you are an international customer, meaning we can't ship to you, if you're out of the United States, if you send your receipt where you pre-ordered it from the big A, Amazon in Australia or Canada or Europe or wherever you are, if you send a copy of your confirmation to the office, info@thegardenersworkshop.com, they will supply you with the links for those downloads. So we understand that we can't ship to you and we don't want to penalize you. But in states, it's for our customers only in the United States, all 50 of the United States. So anyway, all right, let's see. Can you speak to low tunnels or resources that you recommend? So, low tunnels is a wide window of discussion, right? So the low tunnels that I make, I never use plastic. I don't use any type of poly on my tunnels. My low tunnels are number 9 pre-arched hoops, Ag 19 row cover, and weight bags, all of which you can find on my website, thegardenersworkshop.com. We have kits, sell it all individually. We sell big roll, long rolls, 500 feet, whatever you need. But that's all I use. The minute you add poly to the picture, that means that the plants underneath are not getting air or rain when it rains, and that means they're 100% dependent on you. When you use just Agribond, the way that I do, that allows the elements to penetrate it, which is what I'm looking for, actually. My low tunnel is purely for cool. What I'm using these low tunnels for is cool season hardy annuals to keep deer and rabbits and squirrels from grazing all winter long. And we just lost a bunch of Godicia to deer grazing. I uncovered them for 2 days, and the deer ate the Godicia to the ground. And so anyway, that's what we use row cover for. That does give 4 degrees of cold protection, but we only typically grow really what's winter hardy in my zone. So it's really to protect from the wind and varmints. but I can't help you with the poly part. We've just never gone there. And again, it's simplicity, y'all. I just can't, we're working on a project and I just can't wait to tell people. I mean, we just make this so much more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, if you want to be a flower farmer and grow flowers and sell some flowers and have a little bit of life, you know what I mean, not have it totally consume you, we kind of cook that up. We do that to ourselves. And I have resisted that for the last 10 years and done it very successfully. But when I do screw it up, I know that I actually created it. It's not just the business that does it. It's the business owner that does it, right? Let's see. Oh, my straw flowers are mush. Should I cut them back? I wouldn't do anything. So I'm glad you asked that. Mush is not a good sign. I will say that. But you never know how bad that is. I typically don't cut back, trim, do anything. Like when I uncovered out there, we had some plants that were too big. And then I covered them with row cover, and the tips of all of them, the Cerinthe, some Amobium, it all was touching the frost cloth. So all the tops are brown and looking bad, but on the bottom they look fine. I'm not doing anything right now. I mean, I'm not cutting off any foliage. My theory is start more so you have backup and plant more. And so I don't know where you are, but you know, straw flowers for us, they just are winter hardy in zone 8. They can go either way, but anyway. So I'd restart to have a backup, and I wouldn't do anything to them. Unless you absolutely had to have your space, right? Gray Goat Gardens. Best crop for 7B for a first-time flower farmer. Buying 18 acres to start this business. Lavender dahlias. What model is typically the best way to start? You pick. Attract locals from market to wholesale and florist. So, Gray Goat Gardens, my advice to you is to start off by taking my course, the basics. Almost every question you've just asked in there has a very long answer and a lot of ropes tied to it that have a lot of variables on it. First off, most flower farms are only an acre or 2 acres and produce an incredible amount of flowers. You know, lavender, dahlias, I mean, there's just, those are deep answers to all of that. Lavender is totally depends on who you're selling to, what you're selling. Lavender is something that people get pretty inexpensively. It's hard to compete unless you make that a really big thing for your farm. Dahlias are a great crop. I don't grow them anymore. I found other cheaper, easier ways to make money, but dahlias can be. Just totally depends. And again, it's your skill as a farmer. And so I definitely recommend Flower Farming School. We have 3 levels. There's the basics, and then there's Dave Dowling's, bulbs, perennials, woodies, and more, and then greenhouse and hoop growing for cut flower crops with Steve and Gretel. That'll really take you down that road. And I will tell you, the people that we see go in the long haul with successful businesses start small and go slow. And it's really hard to do that if you have a lot of resources at your fingertips. It is really easy to get in over your head, then you're burnt out after 2 years and we never hear from you again. So I would just give you that advice to get some education, and this is the time of the year. Take the course, join the ASCFG, which is an educational association. Tons of information there, and, yeah. So there you go, and congratulations. I just saw something about scabby seed and soul blocks pop up on my phone, but now I can't figure out where it was and was it on for social media. I just had that on my phone too. That was actually the advertisement for our show on Friday, the one that's inside of our app. It's at 12 noon Eastern time on Fridays, and I'm sowing scabby seeds because that's one that we get a lot of questions about, the ones that have the little badminton thing around it, and then there's some that don't. So it's 12 noon on Friday Eastern time inside the app is where we'll be sowing those seeds. So I can't get to the rest of these questions, but remember, y'all, that get here early and get your questions posted down in the bubble. I take them in the order that they're posted. Remember to join me for the show on Friday. If you want a book from the first printing, I would recommend that you pre-order it now. It's at the top of every page at thegardenersworkshop.com. You'll immediately get the access to the Cool Flower Planting Zone download, which will be on your confirmation. And then when the book ships, you'll also get another download of the flowers that didn't make the book, that kind of follow the same outline as the flowers in the book. And the book's packed, y'all. There's over 60 flowers. 2/3 are cool flowers, and then warm, and just my whole analogy and the varieties that we love and how we harvest and and it's a beautiful book. I'm sorry I didn't bring it out. We have one. I have the author's hard copy, and it is beautiful. It's a hardback, 8x10, 240 pages, and it is pretty dadgum amazing, and I can't wait. They were just asking me yesterday, what is the plan for me signing these thousands of books? And so we're coming up with a plan, and I'm sure we'll shoot fun video and do it live and all that kind of stuff too, right? All right, friends, till we meet again on Friday. See you on the flip side. Ciao.